Afternoon, everyone. I'm Ryan Woodward. I'm the Chief of Legislative and Regulatory Affairs here at the National Volunteer Fire Council. Really want to thank you all for joining today's roundtable discussion. We really have a great panel of folks who are really involved and are experts within the grant space within the fire service. And additionally, we'd like to thank MSA Safety for sponsoring this Finding a Grant funding for your fire department roundtable today. Many volunteer and combination fire and EMS departments rely on grants to help fund needed gear, equipment, and training, as well as efforts related to health, safety, and retention. Joining the and of course, what we'll do now is I'll just kind of yield to our great panel here, and just have them give brief introductions on who they are and what their background is. And I guess we can start with you, Dave.
Yes, thanks, Ryan. My name is Dave Lewis. I'm an active member of the Odin Volunteer Fire Company in Maryland. I've been a volunteer for over 50 years. No longer operational, but I served a long time as operational as a firefighter and EMT. I also had the pleasure of being past president and a chief officer in my own department. Reached out to become past president of my own county firemen's association, as well as the Maryland State Firemen's Association. And I currently serve as president of the Cumberland Valley Volunteer Firefighters Association and as Maryland director to the National Volunteer Fire Council. My true love's for training and education. I serve as an instructor with the Maryland Fire and Rescue Institute and National Fire Academy, as well as delivering programs for the NVFC, traveling across the country to enhance training and education. With regard to the grant programs, I've been active with the grant programs for pretty much the last 20 years. I've written grant applications for my own department, as well as consulted with other departments on how to improve their own applications. I served as a peer reviewer for all 3 grant programs, reviewing no less than thousands of applications, and Kathy could attest to that. I do represent the NVFC on the criteria development group. That's where the 9 National Fire Service organizations meet regularly to establish priorities for the grant programs and advising FEMA on needed changes to the grant programs to make them more beneficial to fire departments across the United States. So I'm happy to be here today and hope you find the information today useful to you.
Thank you very much, Dave. And next we'll go with Sarah.
Hi, my name is Sarah Mullins. I've been a firefighter, EMT, and arson investigator for about 9 years at a rural department in Colorado. I've been a volunteer firefighter for most of my career, just recently became career. But I've also been a mechanical engineer for both NASA and the US Navy for about 10 years. And that's kind of given me a lot of insight into how the government programs work, financing, and how to bring things from like the federal level down to like the hometown and the places that need it. I started doing grants about 5 years ago, kind of noticed that a lot of my background tied very well into it. And so now I teach classes on how to improve your application. And I work with a lot of rural departments. Because I was a firefighter, a volunteer firefighter for so long, like I've seen where the need to bring the money to where it needs it is really just it's a deep concern of mine. It's a passion of mine to try and do that. And I'm grateful to the NVFC allowing me to share more of that knowledge with you. So.
Thanks, Sarah. And last but not least, we'll go with Kathy.
Hi, everybody. Kathy Patterson. I'm work for FEMA. I am currently the division director for fire, regional and emergency management grants, which is kind of a new job for me. In the past, I was the branch chief and other positions within the fire grants for over 20 years. But I've also worked with other fire service organizations. I've worked with the fire service dating well over 30 years. So excited to be here to help and talk about what FEMA has to offer with respect to grants. I'm sorry I'm a little bit hoarse today. I'll do my best to make sure you guys can understand what I'm saying and follow up with any questions that you may have. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Kathy. And to reiterate from before, thank you all very much for being here and taking the time for today's discussion. We plan that it will last around approximately an hour. depending on how many questions we receive for our great panelists here. And then also, I will start the discussion with some pre-prepared questions just to get the ball rolling. If you have any, and then we'll take questions from the audience. If you have any questions, please leave a comment and we'll try to answer them. With that, we will get started. So I guess first question will go with Sarah. With your experience, how do you find if applicants can improve their chances of receiving a grant when they're just a small fire district?
Well, that's actually a really good question. I feel like there's a lot of fear surrounding some of these larger applications, as if I'm looking for that six-figure number, 100,000, 150,000, that, maybe I'm just too small to get it. But one thing that really, I think a lot of fire departments is they want to go straight to grants as far as their funding goes. But one of the things that you need to do is come up with like a comprehensive funding strategy. And that may not mean only grants. We need to be looking at mill levies. We need to be looking at those pancake breakfasts. I know they're a lot of effort and you don't make a lot of money. Raffles, there's so many things that you can do in addition to grants. But what's really great about those activities is that it boosts your score on a grant application. The thing with grants is they want to help people who help themselves or help somebody who is in an untenable situation. So if you need $100,000, but you're only bringing in 5,000 from these fundraisers, then yeah, you are demonstrating on these larger grant applications that yes, I'm in an untenable situation. I desperately need your help. And so I feel like that may be kind of a common misconception with a lot of grants, is that that's the first place you stop, but you actually need to try and do some work on your own. And even if you don't get the funds that you need for the full project, that's fine. You just boosted your score and improved your chances of grants. So I hope maybe that answers that question. But yeah,
Thanks, Sarah.
I would strongly recommend that to anyone, any fundraiser, even as simple as a letter writing campaign soliciting donations. It's worth the $20 in stamps to just mail that out to your people and see what happens, because most grants also have a matching component. So even you may come up with a very small amount of money, like AFG is a 5% match. You can come up with 5,000 and that's going to get you to that 100. So that's a strong recommendation I would have for a department of any size.
Oh, good stuff. That's really insightful. Thanks, Sarah. And on the topic of grant funding, how could departments go about finding grants to apply to? And I'm sorry, that's for you, Sarah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So one thing as far as going about applying to things, I'm coming from a rural department. I understand it's like every time you ask a question, hey, dear chief, I need this. Like, sorry, man, it's not in the budget. We're broke. You need to have a strategy before you start going to go look for grants. Identify your 3 greatest needs and then have a targeted search. And you're going to have a much easier time finding money that way rather than just shotgunning, hey, what's out here? Because if you pick your greatest needs, that's also going to show the person awarding the grant that it's a significant need. If it's a would be nice, that's a difficult story to tell. So do you need radios? Do you need a new engine? In some cases that can be a new station, but once you've got an objective in mind, finding grants to match that is significantly easier. So, and then it's easy for you to tell the story because you're like, oh my God, I need this so bad, and it just helps you write a better narrative.
I guess do our other 2 panelists have any other suggestions there as well?
Yeah, I do have some suggestions there. I would agree the challenge is that when we're looking at the fire grants that, it is a competitive grant program, but I would agree with Sarah that the fire service needs to be creative about where, there may be other opportunities that they're not aware of. There is a website that the USDA has put together that has other rural volunteer fire department funding opportunities, whether it's, excess equipment that they can apply to receive. But I also think that the fire service needs to start thinking creatively about some of the other FEMA grant programs that are passed through funding from FEMA down to the state. I think there's opportunity there to have the locals have conversations with their state to say, there's a regional catastrophic grant program that I just inherited. And the rural fire department should be included in those planning and training and exercises, because they're going to need those resources just as much as any bigger town. I think there's an emergency management performance grant program that is issued to the state. I do know for a fact that some of that funding has been distributed to the locals, in particular for wildfire gear. So there's some research that needs to be done from the local aspect. And I think Sarah talked about that. You got to come up with a plan with what you need, and then kind of work through all the different opportunities that may be out there that aren't the traditional, just let's go to fire grants as the only solution that's available. I also know that there's private industries and private companies that are foundations that can look at grant funding as well. I just think that we need to think globally about all the opportunities that are available.
Thanks, Kathy.
And if I could piggyback on that, and again, Sarah made a good point. It's about need, and it's not about want. That, as somebody that sat down and read many grants, it's really is about defining your need. And more importantly, again, looking at the grant programs, whether it be the FEMA grant programs or whether it be, one of these industrial grants or something like that, what are their priorities? And you had to, I call it the kind of alignment of the stars, if you would, but you kind of got to make sure that your needs align with their priorities. And that's often the challenge. People just say, well, how come I didn't get a grant? Well, what were the priorities of the grant program that you're applying against? And it may be something that you need or even feel that you need, but if it doesn't align to the grant programs, it just doesn't work. And there are other resources out there. Grants.gov has a listing for grant programs throughout the federal government. And even if you go look at Walmart, Home Depot, Lowe's, every store manager in these big box stores has a certain amount. So, if you're looking to buy, get, a handful of smoke alarms to distribute throughout your community, why not go to Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever your big box store is? And that store manager has that. So there are opportunities out there, and you just got to be willing to put the homework in and go look for them.
Oh,
Yeah,
thanks,
Dave, I kind of like to add on to that a little bit more with the creativity and funding. This is going to sound awful, but it is true. You also need to look at who is going to benefit from your goal, from your need. And one that's commonly overlooked, as terrible as this sounds, is insurance companies are always looking to limit their liability. If you can make a business case to them that supplying your department with certain things for risk mitigation, they may invest in you at the fire department. Especially, I know here in Colorado, we have like $1 million trailer parks here. And those are things like maybe you need a cistern put in, or maybe you need something to bring your ISO number down. And that's being creative, and they may say no, but you got to be a little bit humble and just put yourself out there, and you'd be surprised what you come up with. And part of that's just like Dave said, like walk into Home Depot, just, hey, can I talk to the manager? Like, can I ask you for help? Those are great things to do.
Oh, thanks, Sarah. And I think we just kind of touched on this, but the last question I was going to ask for you and Sarah, if anybody else wants to jump in on this as well, is so I'm Sarah, especially with your experience with small rural departments, so here you are, your department, I'm broke. We just need money. How do I get it? And I think we touch on this with some of these alternative sources and having a strategy. Is there anything else you all would want to, contribute to that?
Yeah, I think it just kind of comes with breaking down the barrier of being afraid to try big things. I know with some past experience, I've talked to departments about like, hey, we haven't raised a mill levy in 20 years. Like, why aren't we looking at this? And they're like, it's too expensive. We'll have to hire a lawyer. But a lot of that is go find out the process, do the homework before you decide to reject it. In that one case, it turned out filing for a mill levy was just a 2-page paper that you had to file with the county, and that was it. There was just so much fear surrounding it. Like, it's not possible. We can't do that. And it's like, did you call and ask? And just don't be afraid to pick up that phone. If somebody, I mean, a lot of this is, I think, is just understanding the process. Like we've all gone through the training at the fire service. You know, it seems like a lot of us are willing to go into burning buildings, but going into a county office is a little more intimidating. So I think just a lot of that is just put everything on the table. And if you're afraid of it, then you need to learn more about it. And mill levies is a big one. Fundraisers are a big one. You know, don't be afraid if you have a poor turnout the first time. That's fine, because what you're getting out of it is the fact that you tried. You can record the failure if it is one, or it could be wildly successful. But just put yourself out there and don't be afraid to fail. You know, you're going to learn from every experience, but get out there and try.
No, and I like to say, I like how you say get out there and try, because I think that's a huge thing that I'm sure I could see the other panelists kind of nodding their heads as well, or kind of agreeing that, you know, it really is unfortunate that we're seeing a lot of folks getting discouraged, but just getting out there and trying. Yeah, absolutely. Not sure if anybody else has to add to there, but yeah.
Yeah, I think where Sarah was headed with too was with community engagement is very important. You know, too often, you know, at fire service, we've always done a poor job of begging. You know, we were the people, we were the place people came to for problems, but yet we don't want to take our problems out the door. And community engagement is very important, you know, whether it is a fundraising activity or an open house or something like that, that's your opportunity to show the community that hey, you know, this is how much this stuff costs, and this is why we need your help. You know, I entered a venture in my own department 7 years ago now, where we have a weekly food truck event where we bring 12 food trucks in. And of course, the first question my board of directors asked me was how much money we're going to make. And I said, I don't care if we make $1, although that's not true. I do. And the fact that I can bring 1,000 to 1,500 people in every week to visit their firehouse, because remember, it is their firehouse, it's not ours. You know, you can't replace that. And I would believe that as a result of things like that, you know, our fundraising efforts, our mail out fundraising and things like that are done better. So, you know, again, you know, community engagement, political engagement is, you know, say you don't want to get political. Well, you got to be political, especially in these time of day.
Dave, I think you touched on a point I thought was interesting. You know, I live here in Virginia, right outside of Washington, D.C., and there was a fire 2 counties over, and the house burned down because they had a 15-minute response time. And everybody was like, these are my taxpayer dollars. Why weren't they here sooner? And, you know, basically blaming the local government, which was an all volunteer fire department that wasn't supported by any taxpayer dollars. So I think by that community engagement, there are a lot of folks that still don't even understand that the money to open those doors and those support and from the local government to make these things happen in a volunteer department. So that community engagement gives that opportunity for the community to understand, you know, and contribute to, you know, where they can. I did see one of the comments was about, you know, what do you do if you, you know, if your leadership isn't using aspect, especially for the AFG fire grant suite of programs. I would strongly encourage people to, if you don't want to go to the community, go to your neighbor fire departments, and you can apply for a regional grant. There are some nuances to how to make that really benefit for you in terms of collaborating on call volume, collaborating on need, interoperability. So, you know, regionalizing your request for grant funding through the fire grants is a really key aspect to that. So if you're looking for making a competitive application, you're not necessarily as comfortable looking at local donations, regionalize, work with your other neighboring fire departments who also may need the help with those approaches.
I think something I'd like to add on to that is the recommendation that for every chief who's on today, you need to know your county commissioners on a first name basis. If you are not going to those county meetings, you would be surprised how much money goes from the federal level to the state to the county. And sometimes if they know your needs, Grants get magically created for distribution. I've seen this happen so many times. But the thing is, they're only going, it's the squeaky wheel, you know? You want to be there to help them. You want to give them, show county support, but then you also go to them and be like, man, we really could use some help with this. And when they have money coming in and they need to show need, now they know about you. There's a lot of these conversations that happen that never get to go public. So you really, really implore each of you to get to know your county commissioners.
And your state level, state authorizing authorities as well, because that's where the money's going. They're making the funding decisions on the state level. And again, like I would wholeheartedly agree with Sarah. You're gonna have to squeak a little bit and let them know what your challenges are so that you're first in line for some of this distribution of funding. And make sure that you can address that risk, right? I mean, we think all the time about rural fire departments' ability to respond, whether it's response time, or I think Sarah, earlier we were talking about, you have a community that doesn't have adequate water resources, or, that you have a train that's running right through the middle of your town. And, maybe you don't know that it's going to derail in your town one day. Maybe you could. Are you prepared for that now and not worrying about the response side of that? So make sure that your county and your state level understand what those risks are, because it is important to be prepared for those instances.
No, thanks, Kathy. Thank you, everybody. Dave, I'll primarily pick on you now. Programs are often criticized as being disadvantageous to small volunteer departments. Do you think that's a fair criticism? Are there things that you've observed as a peer reviewer? And what do you think are some ways that volunteer fire departments can kind of improve their outcomes in that respect?
Okay, well, first of all, I say that's an urban legend, and the numbers speak for themselves, and I get a chance to see the numbers regular. If I look at FY21, I don't have the FY22 final numbers yet, but there were a little bit over 8,000 applications in FY21, and of those, almost half, 3,700 of them, come from volunteer departments. And there were about 1,000 of the 2,311 awards that went out that went to all volunteer departments. And so you have to look at, the legislative part of that is, and it's clearly spelled out in the NOFO, 25% of the funding has to go to all volunteer departments, 25% has to go to all career departments, and 25% has to go to combination departments. The rest of it is kind of spread out between non-affiliated EMS, state fire training academies, and competitive in those 25, 25, 25 buckets. And so, there's an equal split. There's a fair split. The challenge it really is that it is a competitive program. And as Kathy has said, or will say, unfortunately, 78% of the applications get turned down. Now, why is that? 78%, well, there's just not enough money. And when the program started 20 years ago, we had $750 million to play with. Today, we have $360 million to play with. And look at the cost of things, with a fire engine, $600,000 to $1 million for a fire engine, $1 million or above for a ladder truck, a set of turnout gear from, well, probably less than $1,000 now up to between $3,000 to $5,000 for a set of turnout gear. So our costs have greatly got escalated. So that's not a thing we take to the grants program office. But again, talking about being politically active, we need to talk to our Congress people and our senators. Say, $360 million is nothing, not across the United States. And so, I do believe, the smaller departments do get a fair share, but there's just not enough money to go around. And again, we look at, just over 2,300 awards in FY21. And I can tell you that for communities less than 2,500 people, there were 1,500 applications, and about 360 of those were awarded. So the small departments are getting a fair share. Now, what else can we do? Again, I strongly try to encourage people when I go out and teach about the grants programs to consider regionalization. You know, a lot of times it doesn't look real strong for a small department, you know, that's only running 50 calls a year, you know, to be strongly competitive. But now I take that department running 50 calls and I team them up with 5 more that are running 50 calls. Now I've got, you know, 300 calls or whatever it is across a greater geographical area, larger population, because we got the same challenges, same problems, same solutions. Why not go to regional approach? And I can tell you within Maryland, we've had quite a bit of luck with regional applications. And I applaud some folks down in West Virginia last year that actually had one for $2 million. It was a $2 million regional application that 25 departments needed new turnout gear. And 25 departments are now, small volunteer departments are getting new turnout gear because $2 million. But again, you think about the reach that 25 departments has. And again, that looks great to me as a peer reviewer and it looks great to FEMA because, you know, they're getting bigger bang for the buck, serving a larger population, so a larger geographical area with a common problem, common solution.
No, thanks for that, Dave. And I don't know if any other panelists have anything else to contribute there, or and if not, I mean, I will just capitalize on you know, what David said and reemphasize you know, what we're talking about right now when we're looking at peer reviewers and you know, grant programs specifically are, of course, the AFG and SAFER grants. And you know, as Dave had said, you know, we've been operating you know, on significantly less funding what some of these programs have received when they first began approximately 20 years ago. Right now, we are looking at $360 million apiece for each program. And as Dave had said, you know, we're in an environment where, you know, I mean, inflation is high to begin with. And then also inflation for certain key apparatus, like, you know, whether it be apparatus or whether it be turnout gear or SCBAs is, you know, even outpacing inflation and how much the costs are increasing on these essential pieces of equipment for firefighting. And then, of course, we all know that it's a really tough dynamic out there for recruitment and retention. And you know, what we're looking at right now is, you know, and AFG and SAFER really are the kind of those bedrock grants that really assist with that base level of funding, of a base level of readiness, I should say, for departments. And you know, pretty much the current scope and outlook there is it's a little bit difficult on the Hill. And you know, as I'll put on my Chief of Legislative and Regulatory Affairs hat and just say that, you know, we're looking at, you know, funding proposals for this coming year, FY24. The House has put forth a proposal that, you know, we're satisfied with given the climate of $370 million, which would be a $10 million increase of the current level. The president's budget has supported this request. However, the Senate has put forth a proposal for $338 million. And so we're really advocating right now, I am on behalf of the MVFC, to appropriators and funders on the Hill to really go with that House proposal. This way we can at least get some additional plus up. Because, you know, as David said, you know, that you know, 22% approval is mainly due to availability of funding. So with that, you know, I would definitely encourage all those who are attending this webinar today to reach out to your member of Congress, your senator. We have an action alert on our website that you know, can enable you to reach out and advocate on behalf of AFG and SAFER with just a couple of clicks, very minimal time investment. You know, and then also I can help you with any talking points that you have or anything of that nature and setting up any meetings that you may like. So with that, I'll just say email me at ryan@mvfc.org and I can help you with whatever you need there. And you know, go to our website for our advocacy alert, and I can also assist you with finding that. Also, I'll just also talk a little bit more about where we are with authorization of these programs. The authorization, pretty much the, you know, where it's, you know, laid out in statute that, you know, these programs are there and Congress is recommending that they should receive funding, that expired on September 30th. We're okay for now. That really doesn't mean a lot. It does open us up for some parliamentary vulnerabilities, but we should be okay. The big issue with AFG and SAFER is coming up on September 30th, 2024, which is where there's the statutory shutdown or sunset date for these programs. And from what I've been told, that means that only all AFG and SAFER can do at that point is administer current grant funds that have already been allocated. They cannot put forth any additional funding cycles if Congress does not act and allows that sunset to happen. So that's, again, kind of my charge to all you who are here. Talk to your members of Congress about funding and talk to them about the necessity of getting these important programs reauthorized. You have the Senate bill, which is S-870, and you have the House bill, which is H.R. 4090. So again, I can help you with that. Shoot me an email, go on our website, go to our advocacy alert that we have there. So anyway, we'll go back to our regularly scheduled programming, but I just wanted to insert that as Dave brought up the need for funding. So, so with that, Dave, being a peer reviewer, how do you think would help, those who are seeking grant funding to, get a better idea and to craft better applications? And also, what have you found as being a peer reviewer for a number of years now, some other benefits and things that you have learned?
Sure, Ron. Again, I've had a chance to read a lot of them. I can tell you that, I think we had kind of hit a part of that earlier, that the applicant identifies a clear need. What is the need based on risk? There is some risk to your department because turnout gear is 25 years old. Obviously, there's a health and safety risk associated with that. And then what is your solution? Make that clear, and what is the benefit to safety? Because again, if you look at the authorizing language, it talks about what is the purpose of the assisted firefighter grant. And it is to improve the safety of the emergency responder. I don't know the exact words, but it's something similar to that. So, again, we're looking about, a risk-based solution to identify what is safety. I also tell you, I don't need a doctoral dissertation. Just because the application allows you 3,000 characters or 3,000 words, don't mean you had to write 3,000, and make it short and sweet, but make sure it makes the point. It paints me the picture. I often tell people that, your application has about 10 minutes in front of my eyes, so you got to paint that picture within that 10 minutes in order to make me feel that, you really defined your problem, your solution. And it really has to be, again, your local problem, your solution. Don't give me a lot of words about what, NFPA studies have done or anybody else's studies have done and this, that, and the other. No, how's it benefit you and all the firefighters that walk in and out of your fire station? And unfortunately, I hate to say this, but financial need becomes our biggest falling point. I've seen the numbers that Kathy has produced before and why applications fail. Financial need, because we can talk all day about our turnout gear and our hose and our ladders and our extrication tools. We do pretty good about that as firefighters, but we don't talk very good about dollars and cents. And what the peer reviewer wants to see is, do you really need the money? What are your income levels and where's it coming from? So much for government support, tax support, fundraising, donations, whatnot. And then where do you spend it? And at the end of the year, that leaves you $2.98. Well, okay, you obviously can't provide turnout gear. And unfortunately, people don't, it comes out with something like, we need the government money because we don't have any. Well, what's that mean? Tell me, we better get a chance of getting money from the Easter Bunny than we would our local government. And I've actually seen those words. and so, think about making that financial need clear, even to the point of specifying in dollars and cents what your incomes are and what your outputs are. It's almost like people think that's secret information. I ain't gonna give it to the government. Well, no, if you're a volunteer department, you're following an IRS 990, and I can go online and find that. So make it clear to me. But more importantly, on the technical side, again, you're being scored on 4 areas: the project, which is, what do you need, why do you need it? Cost benefit, why is this the best use of funds? The outcome, how it's going to benefit safety of your firefighters, and financial need, why it's on there. So, my big peeve is make it short, make it sweet, but make it to the point and paint that picture for me in 10 minutes. And by all means, complete the application, I've actually read applications that says, Sandy will provide this point. And I actually stood up in the room in one of our peer review sessions. Is Sandy in the room? Because obviously it wasn't in the application. So when you get done, read it and read it again, and then hand it to somebody else and let them read it. Because again, it has to make sense to not just you, but it has to make sense to the three people that are going to read and score your application.
Oh, thanks, Dave. And,
Dave,
oh,
I was
Sarah.
actually wondering if I could add on to Dave's comments, which were just wonderful. And I think that's something that's maybe poorly understood, is that these applications are graded, they're read by 3 different people and scored by 3 different people. And they actually have conversations in the room when they do these with the other people who are scoring to be like, why'd you score the way you did? And try and come up with a consensus for what the application should be. And that is kind of one thing going on with financial need is probably the one that a lot of departments struggle with. Because I've been to Maryland to do scoring as well, and that's something. One thing I've run into is seeing penny pincher departments, where the board will just not authorize capital expenditures, which I totally understand, but it's really hard to make a case that you need the money when, say, you have a $5 million, nest egg, but you only have 14 volunteers and you have more money coming in than you need. It's kind of like you just need somebody to your problem isn't so much that you need the money, it's that you need to convince your board that you need the money, because you have it. It's just getting access to it. And then something else going along with the applications is there are, like Dave said, if just because you have 3,000 characters, you don't have to use them all. But making it readable, this is the 21st century. There are websites out there like Grammarly.com. Just paste your narrative in there at least and just check the basic grammar. Do these sentences make sense? Because I know some people, they work on these applications over and over and over again. And, sometimes you forget where you worked up here and up here. And by the time you're done with it, you're just over it and you just want to click submit and let it go. But just make sure that at least, your basic, there's so many free tools out there to check your basic grammar. And then I would absolutely say have more than 2 people read your application. Make sure you're going to get the best experience if you have them read the scoring criteria before reading your application. But think about it, 3 people are reading it. So you find 3 random people to read it too. Preferably at least one of them who's not in the fire service, because it needs to be intelligible to every person who even doesn't know what we do. And sometimes I know at least I struggle with it getting, like SCBA, like we say that all the time, but somebody who works at the grocery store is gonna be like, what's that? And so just make sure that you have somebody who's giving you that really honest feedback.
And, Kathy, I see you unmuted.
Yeah, a couple things I wanted to add. I would agree with both Dave and Sarah. I think that, there isn't a reason to start thinking about what your narrative look like now. I have been on numerous calls with folks who are telling me what their need is on this call, and I'm looking at their narrative at the same time, and like you said, none of that in your narrative. So I think part of what I see, or has been the struggle with the fire service, is they're very good at sitting around the table and talking about what their challenges are, and not necessarily good getting it from here to here on the typewriter. And I think that the tools have changed so much. Even Microsoft Word has translation services now in it. So you could sit the computer down right in front of the table, and everybody can start talking and start putting those leading questions into a rough narrative that can then be polished. And so that you get all those thoughts out from here down onto the paper, and then work from there. The leading questions don't change year over year, that we're scoring on the peer review side. So, the guides that we have already published, if you haven't looked at the self-evaluation guide, that is exactly the score sheet that our peer reviewers use. So there's no ambiguity. And like Dave said, you can write a narrative, hand that score sheet to somebody and have them rate you. And it should be somebody that wasn't involved in the preparation, because sometimes I think people get familiar with what they think that they are communicating. There's a new guide on narrative preparation. I think one of the questions, I didn't get to track all of the Q&A questions, but one of them was about, is there standard language? I would never put standard language in a narrative. And you use their narrative, you're running a risk of assuming that their information is going to match your same information and your same need. So I make it your own story, make it personal, make it about you. I've also seen in cases where the same narrative pops up in front of a peer reviewer, and I can tell you most of the time it gets shot down hard. So I think that, I would not use template languages on these narratives. I'm also going to give a plug for those folks who want to hire a grant writer. If you are, prepare, if you're going to give them funds to prepare a grant, it should be about your department. Unfortunately, there are grant writing companies that use templates. And if they're using a template, you're wasting your money. And so you have the opportunity when you go into a contractual agreement with these folks to say, how can I protect myself in my investment into this application and this narrative? And make sure that what you're getting is unique to your department. Always read before you submit to make sure that everything that's being said is factual and accurate, because we don't want to accuse anybody of waste, fraud, and abuse. But if it's not about your department and somebody, reports you to the Office of Inspector General and we come asking, why did you say that? If it's not about you. And, unfortunately, sometimes the answer is, I never read it. So don't put yourself in that position. I think it's critically important. But I am going to put you on the spot a little bit, Ryan. I feel like every person who spent a week with us in peer review understands more about the competitive nature of these grants. And we do come to the National Volunteer Fire Council looking for people who want to spend some time with us in being a grant review panelist. So Ryan, I really don't know how you collect names for that, so I'll let you speak to that. But we do offer both in-person and remote, because I know coming for a week isn't always easy for folks, but we will pay the expenses to get you to Emmitsburg and spend a week with us and enjoy reviewing applications. We pick on Dave a lot, so if you see him there, you guys give him some mercy, because he does yeoman's work to review a lot of applications and even do some cleanup after the fact. So I'm sure he can attest to how much fun it is to participate.
No, and Kathy, I'm really glad that you brought up peer reviewers, because if you didn't put me on the spot, I was going to plug it anyway. So I'm glad. One thing I hear a lot is that within the peer review space, there is not much of a volunteer perspective relative to the other peer reviewers who are present in the room, and that we really need to do what we can to get those numbers up. And I really want to make that a goal of us, coming up for this cycle at the NVFC, is to get those numbers up. Again, we have a peer review application on the website, but again, also please email me, Ryan, RYAN, @nvfc.org. And, I can send you that application, answer any questions that you have, or get you to the right person who can in regards to peer reviewing. So absolutely, if you're interested, we'd love to hear from you. And as you just heard from Dave and Kathy, first of all, your expenses will be covered. And second of all, it is a great learning opportunity for you all. So just want to really make a plug for that. So, yep. And also, Dave, I saw you on mute before I jumped in.
Yeah, I was going to kind of jump on that whole concept of templates and things like that, because it really does irritate me when I'm doing peer. Usually, we start on Monday morning. By Tuesday, didn't I just read that yesterday? And you find out it's somebody that's either taken somebody else's grant and just kind of changed their name. And in some cases, it's a grant writer out there using the same application, just changing the name. I can also tell you that, there are vendors out there that says, hey, we will give you a template that works. So you're not telling me your problem, your solution. And I tell people, by all means, if you need turnout gear and the department down the street from you, was successful in getting one there, by all means, ask them for a copy of their grant and read it over to kind of understand what they put in there and what worked. but, go in there and make it your problem, your solution, because, nothing irritates me more, and I've actually seen this where I got one department name in one paragraph, and I go 3 paragraphs down, and it's got another department's name because they didn't cut and copy and paste. They didn't cut and paste everywhere they needed to do. So you really do need to talk about your problem, your solution.
Yeah, Dave, I want to add on to that. It kind of kills your credibility when you start seeing more than one department name in their application because they've taken it from somebody else, and it kind of it takes the genuine, like the genuineness. I don't know if that's the right word out of it, because I find the best applications are the ones where they're kind of written from the heart. Where this is my problem, I have a vested interest in this, the success of this. And so I would definitely, but there are great things to look at examples from, not to take away from that. Like as far as describing your district, like one of the things is like describe the jurisdiction that you serve. I do find it's good to rely on examples for that because sometimes you're just like, I don't know, I have one station and 14 people. Okay, well, what's your population? Do you have any special hazards? Are you mostly a wildland district? Are you mostly prairie? Are you very urban? And sometimes people have like really great ways of kind of quantitating that information. So I definitely would rely on examples for that. But as far as like your problem, addressing your need, those things you should never be using templates for. You need to come from your heart.
Well, thanks everybody for that. And Kathy, I guess I'll just pick on you now. So when is the next round of fire grants that will come available? Are there any changes from the last funding opportunity? And what can people do to prepare for this coming round?
Yeah, so we're actually preparing for the next round. The application period should start for AFG for the equipment grants late January. So I think we're targeting January 29th is the start. We have the notice of funding opportunity that's making its last rounds through the concurrence process here in FEMA. I'm hoping that we can post it early January to give you guys plenty of time. There are some significant changes. We are going to prioritize replacement of PPE. That has a lot to do with what's going on industry-wise with PPE, but also, if you look at the NFPA needs assessment, we're not moving the bar on replacement as fast and as much as we could. So focusing on those basic equipment needs is going to be a priority for this coming year. Also, one of the things I think we underplay a lot is the microgrants application. Historically, you get extra bonus points for multi-year unsuccessful applicants. We're talking about small grants. Intent is to be in and out. You have small needs and a small grant will suffice for you. So we're elevating that from 50K to 75K. So you'll be able to buy a little bit more based on those smaller grant programs. So more to come on that. We intend to start the webinar series in January. So that is going to be where we're going to go into a lot more details about not only the pre-score process of applications, but the panel review and how to prepare an application. I think the NVFC team already dropped into the chat our link to sign up for our email blast. If you're not signed up, I strongly encourage you to do so. We do post tidbits of information about the grant programs. It definitely has the webinar schedule. It comes out monthly, has some tips on good practices for managing grants. So again, it is posted on the website as well, but if you want it fresh off the press, it'll come in the email blast. And then we have SAFER and fire prevention are going to run concurrently. They're going to start in March. So beginning of March. So those applications and those NOFOs will be either late January or into early February. So you can start preparing for those as well. A lot of the things that we say we're nearing the focus, making some changes to the equipment, but the Get Ready guide, the narrative guide, the self-evaluation guide, there's not, we call those evergreen documents. There has not been substantial changes between last year and this year. So you can download those now at the FEMA.gov/firegrants website. And start preparing now. I do think that I saw somebody comment about SAM.gov. I wish there was something I could do that was insightful helpful, making that process easier. I understand that it's a frustration point for folks. I understand it takes some endurance to get through that gauntlet. But it is a requirement across the board for all federal government funding. So I would start now to make sure that your SAM.gov registration is live. If you haven't applied before into the FEMA Go system, you can apply and register and be set and ready to go way before the application period's open, so that there aren't any challenges with initiating and starting an application when we click open. But the next big part is the notice of funding opportunity. We've heard a lot of comments about folks talking about how big the document is. And I get it. There's a lot of rules and regulations that come with being stewards of the federal dollars, right? This is your taxpayer dollars. We got to make sure that we're accurately tracking and, ensuring that the rules of the road are followed. But if you're just looking for what should I apply for, what are the priorities, skip to Appendix A, just start there. And then if you get into something like, hey, this looks like I'm really going to get this grant, then you look at what are the rules of the road, and please read the rules of the road before you accept the grant, because those federal grant requirements are important. But for the purposes of applying, and you want to know what the priorities are, go jump to Schedule A, Appendix A.
No, thank you very much, Kathy. And I guess just we'll do a couple of minutes on this, and we'll try to get to some of the questions because they've been coming in. But I think this is important to address too. So for those who, and this is for everybody, for those who have been chronically turned down or been unsuccessful, do you all have any advice as to what to do in that case?
Yeah, I
Yeah, let
think
me
there's a
start with that.
misunderstanding a little bit about how scoring happens too. Sorry, Dave.
No, go ahead.
This is a two-step process. I mean, I've had a recent conversation about somebody who's had catastrophic issues in their community and assumed the panelists would understand that significance of that need. Reality is their application never went in front of a human. It was at Prescore. And the reality is there were substantial errors in the application. So you got to make sure that you're reading the rule, the NOFO, to make sure that you're asking for a priority and you understand how the application works. And that there is a pre-screening process to ensure that your application is meeting those priorities. In almost every application, what are you being evaluated in that pre-score? What we're trying to get to is your need greater than somebody else that looks like you? So again, as Dave mentioned, this 25, 25, 25. We look at, if you're going to put all the volunteer departments, and more specifically, rural volunteer departments against each other, rack and stack, what their age of their equipment, what are they asking for? Is the equipment a priority? What is the condition of their equipment? We talk about that. That's one of what we refer to as the purpose question. And rank them that way. We do need a qualifier of, if all things look the same, who are you going to put forward first? And I know this is a bit of contention, but that is where call volume comes into play. So call volume is so low on the priority list, it can come into play, but more often than not, it's a tiebreaker between you and somebody else. And that goes back to what Brian said about, 78% of the folks are not going to get funded, and there has to be some cutoff to that. So you are ranked against other like departments as you go into this pre-score, and that'll dictate who goes to the panel review. We take 200% of available funding to peer review, so way more than we actually intend to review. But that's how they get there. So if you've been multi-year unsuccessful, we've got two things going. One is the workshops that are going on now for folks who were unsuccessful from the last go around, talks about this exactly the scoring process. And then you can always give a call to either my staff or the regional fire program specialist, who we have provided them with all the data they need to kind of like walk through, read your application with you, and provide some guidance and feedback on that for you. Dave and Sarah, I think you both had comments.
No, I just wanted to add to it, and maybe coming from the other side into grant writing is, so the AFG NOFO is about a 2 coffee document. That's how I rate all the NOFOs. So you're going to get through 2 cups of coffee, and you need to understand that if you're gonna go for a grant, and you're especially going to be asking for a lot of money, there's no shortcut for this. There's no cliff notes for this. You need to sit down and commit. This is where you're going to shut your phone off. You're going to sit and you're going to focus on what's in front of you and really absorb it. And that's going to give you that good application. It's not the most riveting book to read, but it's only 60 pages. It's 2 coffees. You just got to look at it like that. Every time the NOFO comes off, I have a corner of the library and I double shotgun my coffees and I read the whole thing. And it really boosts your scoring because you know, Kathy said it in Appendix A, like, what's my priority? Does your priority match this? Cool, you're going to get better scoring on that alone. So, and it's not just with federal grants. I found state grants do it, private grants do it. Everybody tells you what they want to fund. And so just matching your priorities with that, you're going to come out ahead. So just invest in coffee or some caffeine of choice.
So I want to hit on my kind of top 5, top 6. What should you be doing? My number one thing is start now. Just because the application period doesn't open until January 29-ish doesn't mean you wait till January 28th to start work. And that becomes where a lot of departments do fall because now they don't have all the data they need. They're scurrying around for data and they're putting 9999s in their applications or something like that they don't go back and correct, which it either knocks them out in pre-score or knocks them out when the peer reviewers see that. So start now. As Kathy says, the rules don't drastically change from year to year. Start with last year's NOFO. Now, again, there are going to be some changes to priorities this year, and I can tell you, being the NVSC rep to criteria development, we took that charge to our last set of meetings because we do have so many fire departments across the U.S. that are continuously getting turned down for turnout gear, continuously getting turned down to SCBA. We want to make those the highest priority. What's my firefighter need to get in the door safely? A set of turnout gear on their back, a SCBA on behind that, a radio, a thermal energy camera, and a hose in their hand. And we took that and worked with the 9 fire service organizations, which I can tell you is often a struggle because being the volunteer rep in a room that has a lot of IAFF and a lot of IFC present, which aren't necessarily volunteer friendly, is sometimes a challenge, but we all agreed that those should be the highest priorities. So start now, recognize that. Number 2, do it as a team. This is a team sport. It's not you don't do it alone because different people are going to come in with different thoughts, different ideas. Number 3, consider the regional approach. Number 4, learn from it, become a peer reviewer. We talked about that. And above all, kind of number 5, consider your greatest need and how that aligns with the priorities. And then I'll kind of close it out with number 6. It says, complete the entire application and read it again, have somebody else read it.
Yeah, those are some great points. But something I'd also like to add to that is don't wait till the application opens to define your need. If no one has ever priced out a vehicle before, one of the things that I absolutely cringe is when I hear departments say, we'll just do a grant for whatever is the offline basic model and then we'll figure it out later. No. You need, if you've never tried to design a vehicle that you're buying off the line, you're going to count on 1 to 2 months for that. You do not wait until the application period opens because by then it's too late. Working with a lot of vendors right now, helping some clients get bids and stuff. AFG is not opening until the end of January. I can tell you everybody's working their tails off right now to be prepared, define their need, and define even what the dollar value is that they need. So these are all activities that have nothing to do with the grant cycles because you need to be defining, you understand the objects that you need, but you need to understand the financial aspect of it. And even though that bid has a 30-day hold on it, it doesn't matter because now you know you're in the ballpark of what you're going to need. What's your matching fees going to be? Because don't get involved unless you know you can meet the matching because federal grants are usually 5%, but I know here in Colorado, our state grants are 50%. So you need to know what you're in for before you start going for grants. And that has nothing to do with the cycle being open or closed.
Vehicles become a pet peeve of mine because everybody thinks they're going to get a new fire engine with AFG. And the reality is there's $360 million out there. No more than 25% of it can be spent on vehicles. That's $80 million spread out across 50 states, plus the DC, plus the territories. You're not going to buy many fire engines. and you aren't going to buy many $800,000 to $1 million. You are going to get the plain Janes that are and that's all they're they're going to come back and say, well, you put an application in, it was accepted. You asked for $800,000, but we're only going to give you 5 because that's what a plain Jane costs. And the other thing, and I had somebody ask me this about a month ago, says we need to replace our fire engine. It's a 1989 fire engine. Oh, well, that probably needs to be replaced. What's it parked next to? 2014. I said, forget it. Don't even write your application because I'll write your turn down letter for you now. Because it really is based on the fleet, not the vehicle you're trying to replace. So if you're trying to replace your second line piece of fire apparatus, it's not going to happen because there's too many needs out there competing for roughly $80 million, which is the 25% of the 360.
I just want to make one plug too on the cost share waiver. I realize that there are a lot of communities that being able to contribute a cost share is hampering them from applying in the first place. Take a look at the requirements for a cost share waiver. There is an opportunity to request that FEMA waive your cost share. You have to meet the criteria in order to get that waiver, but it is an opportunity for those, and it is really based on those who are really struggling in the ability to meet a cost share.
There was a question or two about microgrants, and again, microgrants we fought to get microgrants raised to $75,000, which FEMA accepted because again we consider the cost of things. If I need 10 sets of turnout gear or 20 sets of, let's say 20 sets of turnout gear, or really when we talk about SCBA, and that's SCBA being $8,000 or more nowadays. If I need 10 sets of SCBA, to replace the stuff that's 20 years old and past its expiration dates, I couldn't do that under the 50,000. So again, somebody asked, is it better to do it on a microgrant or regional? I don't want to advise you one way or the other. Regional works good, but again, I could tell you as a peer reviewer, the microgrants, usually those are some of the first applications that we review, and we tend to try to give them a little bit more consideration because we can get a whole lot more grants awarded with smaller amounts by doing that. So.
Well, I want to say thank you very much to everybody. I mean, I know we've had a few questions and answers, questions coming in, but I think we did address a number of them. I do apologize to those of you that we did not get around to, but we'll be collecting these questions and be getting back to those we didn't answer. But I just wanted to, I wanted to thank our panelists for taking the time. I think today was a great discussion. I know I learned some things even working in the space for quite a while. So really just appreciate you all and appreciate all those who attended today. And again, I know we answered a number of the questions that were coming in as we were discussing, but those we didn't get to, we will collect those and we'll do our best to get back to you all as soon as possible. So thank you all again, and hope you all have a great holiday.